What's up, y'all? Today we're going to do some edge retention comparisons and performance testing with a few knives from Olitans. So we have the Mini Mastiff in 14C28N steel, and its more premium brother, the Mini Ti Mastiff in Bowler M390. So these have some varying differences. The premium version has some nice pivot collars, some more texturing, a frag pattern on that thumb stud. It actually has a thicker blade. It's got a little bit of an integral design. We've got a milled pocket clip. And of course, we've got M390 steel, where here we have 14C28N. So the M390 is also a little bit thicker overall, and I believe it's a little bit thicker behind the edge as well. So let's go ahead and take a look. So we have 96 thousandths for the blade thickness, 95. And for behind the edge, 14 thousandths. Very nice slicey geometry for the 14C28N. Now let's check out the premium version in M390. Good bit thicker there. And behind the edge, 15.5. Not too much thicker behind the edge, considering how much more significantly the overall thickness of the blade stock is. So let's see. We're going to do our regular tests with this. We're going to cut up 150 cuts through cardboard, 50 cuts through rope, and see how they test. We'll do some sharpness tests before and again after to see how they do. Let's go ahead and get some paper so we can see that these are both pretty sharp. Now, I have not sharpened these. I did strop them both from the factory, and they did come very sharp. I do like to just hit it on a strop just to get rid of any factory burr that may have been left behind. So they both can cut the paper very easily. We've got a nice shaving edge there. Let's check out the 14C28N. Again, cutting that paper very well. And we are shaving as well. So let's go ahead and take them to the best tester and put some numbers to it. We'll start with the M390. And now for the 14C28N. All right, so our M390 had an initial sharpness of 120 grams to cut that line on average, and the 14C had 128, extremely close results for an initial sharpness, and I'll add that is some pretty impressive sharpness for a factory edge. Again, I did only strop it. They didn't get reprofiled. You can still see it that they have those factory grind lines there. So let's go ahead and cut up some cardboard. We'll come back and test again and see how they held up. All right, both of these knives performed very well, especially for their size. These little round 2¼ inch blades. Not the first knives that I would pick for that kind of task of breaking down a lot of boxes. Now, I've talked a little bit recently, you may or may not have seen, about these forward finger choils. Now, on a knife this size, it's completely and 100% necessary. But again, these knives did perform great, but probably not the first knives I would pick for this task. And one of the reasons I really don't care for a forward finger choil for a lot of hard use is when you're going through a lot of material and your finger is right there near the blade, that material starts to abrade your hand as you're running against it over and over again. So especially in knives like the Bodacious or the PM2, I'm going to stay a little bit further away from that blade while I'm really putting work in on something, because it does just keep my hand out of the way of that. Anyway, again, though, for their size, they performed really well. We can see a little bit of that wearing on that coating. I didn't wash that off, so I don't know if that will wipe off or not. But the I couldn't really tell while I was using it. They both slowed down a little bit towards the end, and when I was getting to the rope, I could definitely tell that there was some wear going on. So let's go ahead and cut some paper, see how that goes. So the M390, now neither of these will shave now. So definitely some rougher cuts going on with the M390, especially when I focus on that area that was seeing a lot of that work with the rope. Not too bad. We're still getting through it. Just not quite as good as it was before. Yeah, we're definitely slowing down the middle of that edge somewhere. We're not doing too hot with that one. But no visible chips or rolls on the edge anywhere. Same with the 14C. Not flying through it like they were before, definitely. I mean, but they'll still cut. These knives can still work. If you're not just sitting trying to cut paper, these both are still plenty sharp to be able to perform, regular tasks. Not too bad at all. Let's go ahead and we'll put some numbers to it so we can see how they stack up. So we'll go ahead and, again, like we did before, start with the M390. And now for the 14C. So the M390 had an initial sharpness on average of 120 grams to cut that line. After our cutting of cardboard and rope, that went up to 259, or a 139 gram increase. Now our 14C 28N, that had an initial sharpness of 128 grams on average to cut that line, and that went up to 340, or an increase of 212 grams to cut that line. So we saw around 42% better edge retention with the M390 over the 14C 28N, which we could expect. There was a little bit difference in geometry here, but I don't think there was difference enough to really show in that performance. 14C28N does have a little bit more toughness, but we see that that did not save it here any either. And I will also say that Olitans did provide me with both of these knives, and they did mention that they did want me to conduct one of these tests comparing the two, and that's kind of the reason why they provided me with the budget and the premium version. So the budget version, more budget-friendly version, still performed great, but if you want to pay a little bit more and get the premium, well, you'll have a little bit better performance, better materials. I do like those thumb studs a lot better too, but either way, both excellent knives and excellent choices. So some interesting results. Thank you for watching.